You don't disclose your vote. Now, a politician comes to you because you are the chief. And then when he visits you, you open your wide mouth and say, I support you and your party. The logical sequence is that you are dividing your people. And the chief is a unifier. Now, you are to bring your people together. That's why if anything happens in the city or town or village, the first place or the last place they go is the chief's palace. But if you organize your life in such a way as to estrange the other political parties, the moment you say you support one party, the logical deduction that the other people who don't support that party, you don't like them or they don't like you. You are a divisive character, and in my view, you should even be deposed. And it's not that the people who make those noises in support of a political party don't know the consequences. They do. They know that they divide their people by publicly announcing that they support one party or the other. And you can live, have a judges, we vote, but you hardly hear the judge saying, I support this party or that party. You can't do that. You are not allowed. And if we put in that clause, and no, the chiefs have not been able to attack the clause, but between you and me, a few chiefs who have breached that clause, you know their fate. Some people are even advocate that they should be deposed because they are no good chiefs. And I always draw a distinction between good chiefs and bad chiefs. And the chief who takes part in party politics obviously is not fit to be a chief. That's why we put that clause there. Now we have experimented with it for all the time from 1992 up to now. And we know the chiefs who have gone forward to breach those conditions, you know what happened to them. So whether you want the clause or provision to remain as it is up to you. But I think the people of this country will want more stringent measures because we've got to a situation because of the freedom of speech, freedom of action, and freedom of everything. That dispensation, it appears that people do whatever they want unless the law tells them not to. Well, the people who hate the section says nobody can tell a chief how he should think or how he should react because ordinarily a chief is the paragon of wisdom. He is the microcosm of sense, and nobody can think. In fact, in most areas, when the chief speaks, nobody speaks because he is regarded as having the last word. So how dare you tell him that he should not join a particular party? You are infringing on his human rights. Well, we put it in. Now you have experimented, and you are in a better position to decide whether this is a clause you need to remove, so that you give free rein to chiefs to do whatever they like. Or now, considering what some chiefs have done in the few elections you've had, you think they should be restrained and even banned as chiefs if they breach those conditions. That's what we stand for. Local government, I've mentioned about the district assemblies and municipal assemblies. The president has a lot of power. Is that what we want? Well, you see, we were torn between the American system and the British system, and we decided to put what was there as you see it. We have had 20 years of practice, 30 years. Yes. So we know the effect now. We should be in a position to take positive steps that will improve the lives of people. Listen carefully. My personal view is not what you think is right, but what generally is good for the society. Go back to the chief's situation. How can you be a good chief if you start sitting in your palace by one morning or every morning condemning one political party and praising another political party and calling yourself a unifier? A chief is essentially a unifier. And if you do that, you are dividing your people and you justify your removal. That's my view. You should be removed. And so all these provisions, you have to look at them again in the light of our behaviors and lives in the past 30 years since the Constitution was drawn. Now, you have practical instances, and if you are not sure, get people to go out and research for you. We didn't have that kind of chance. We had to act on the spur of the moment, surrounded by people who knew more than what we thought they knew, or perhaps, I don't know, maybe did not know much about the Constitution, but they still had to vote. And so we managed to craft something, what you have. For the very nature of the lecture I'm giving now justifies the review of the Constitution. And take it or leave it. You cannot run away from that fact. But remember, 20, 30 years from now, what you do will be treated just like it's being treated today. We need to re-examine ourselves. A lot of things are going on, which you and I know are wrong, but we are not bold enough to say them. Put them in the Constitution, make some people sit out, so that life will go on well for all of us. Thank you.
The chairman for the occasion, Right Honorable Prof. OQUAYE, will make a few remarks and then we open the floor for discussion. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the contribution of Justice Brobe. He was there. Remember that you and I were not there. He was there and was holding the pen to draft as well. So I want to stimulate your own asking him of questions, and also for him to also come to other areas so that we appreciate why we have certain provisions and what we should do with them by way of being the devil's advocate in that direction. It's tickled on the indemnity, the transition provisions. I think his own view will be want to know as to whether they have served their purpose of stabilizing the republic, and for which matter, whether they are now of no use and should be scrapped.
Well, you see,
I may just want to say a few things. Yes, not necessarily for you alone, and then we will engage you a bit more. Then we've also heard about the very circumstances leading to the Constitution at all, and the fact that we had to take it or leave it. Essentially, that's what it appears we had to face. And I remember very well the bitterest opponent of the regime, Professor OQUAYE, being very supportive of the yes, let's accept the Constitution, even if we don't like many things that are therein. And I think that will also make us really want to think out that a certain era is gone. Therefore, should we seriously sit back now and see what we can do with this Constitution, which was actually made under pressure, including, for example, a situation whereby even if the legislature censured a minister, the president could veto it. It was made for a purpose. That is the security of the military man having turned to be a civilian leader. These were all part of the process. And I think he has also made us appreciate why, for example, at that particular time, we had a situation whereby the former president in the previous constitution, 69-79, a former president was a member of the Council of State. in their exercise, that aspect of former presidents being members of the Council of State, that provision was taken out. Was this also to be part of satisfying President Rawlings so that President Liman wouldn't bother him at the Council of State? These were some of the situations that we faced. For example, we want to know about the gender disparity because the Constitution does not favor women. And affirmative action provisions, you talk about equality and leave it like that. Today, some people now talk about the fact that when you have, you qualify how a member can go to parliament, then you are now discriminating against men. Some are making that argument. For that matter, we should not tinker with the Constitution at all, and we should let it remain as it is. The lecturer has really helped us appreciate chieftaincy and politics. And I believe that we will be in the position to also appreciate this further if we should tickle his mind a bit more, because of the history of the country. Nkrumah and the chiefs will run away and leave your sandals behind. And some also believe that the present era is rather very, very protective of chiefs by isolating them from the quagmire of politics. Because if you don't get into the affray, your sandals cannot be made dirty. And that alone is very, very good to some people's minds, so far as chiefs are concerned. If you get inside there, you are in trouble sometimes. And also, with regard to the chiefs as an institution, we need to ensure that we protect them from unnecessary destrument. When chiefs get involved in politics, the tendency is that they are destooled. And the chieftaincy system in Ghana being what it is, there are always alternatives waiting behind because of the lineage system. It's not like Britain where the first child or the first boy is going to be the chief. We have a number of people who are also qualified from the same tree, the lineages that form the town or the city. So it's a matter of choosing one at any given time. So the moment the politicians start getting into interfere in politics, in chieftaincy, the chances are that they will find your cousin, support him, and put him in your place as your chief. And the Constitution went rather in detail to say a chief is a person who, hailing from the appropriate lineage, has been nominated, elected, and installed as a chief, leaving out the recognition principle that was in the Nkrumahist constitution, and which was actually a child of the colonial system. So it means when government withdrew its recognition, you were hanging in the air like a bat if you were a chief. But now no government can withdraw any recognition again because it doesn't exist. And that is also under security really for chiefs. Once your people are nominated, elected, installed by custom, you are a chief without any political recognition being a qualification. So I would say this is an insulation. It doesn't insulate them from the politics which led Nkrumah, for example, to threaten them. Perhaps Mr. Justice Brobe will want to tell us also what informed the whole idea of ministers coming from parliament in a presidential system. It's a very, very controversial area. Because if you elect a presidential system, then you want to go a la America. And if you go America, they leave out the British tendency of ministers coming from parliament, which are two different, systems. And some people would rather prefer a dichotomy. Why did you want to do that in the circumstances, and what involved us? And finally, the political party. So you see, with him we can extract a number of things once he's still here from him, because political parties were then insulated from taking part in local council or local elections. Was it a way of the PNDC wanting by all means to keep some of their non-party politics philosophy when it has failed at the national level? Well, then let's at least justify something at the local level so that we don't lose out completely. These are some very interesting things that tickle our minds, and which you may want to ask more from the man who was on the spot. Me and you were not there, he was there. So this is for both your consumption and his consumption, yes, so as to stimulate the debate that only those who were there who perhaps tell us the real dynamics. So with that, Mr. Justice Broby may want to make a comment, and you may want to ask him questions accordingly, that so as to enrich the debate before us. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The point is, you raise a number of issues. Let me start with the easiest one, the affirmative action. You see, we got into a situation where there were some chiefs in the north. They vowed never to cooperate with any system which enabled women and men to sit together, like the way they behave when they go to Muslim churches. So, if you read the Constitution, we define chieftaincy in a way which they did not like, because as the definition now stands, a woman can be a chief. They didn't accept that. They believe that women and men cannot sit together plan life, and it begins from their church. Well, it's not something you can legislate and just like that. You have to take into account the people's custom, their religion. I've said that we were supposed to draw a constitution taking into account what was in the best interest of the people. Today, I know as a fact that some women have been agitating that they want to get to the National House as of right. And also, they formed Queen Mothers Associations to fight all these disadvantages. Now, you need to consider the agitations in the light of modern life. The dispensation for freedom of action, freedom of religion, freedom of thought. Now, if somebody's religion prevents him from sitting in the same room with a woman, you cannot create upper house over Ghana with the possibility of a woman being a member. Some chiefs will walk out if you do that. And we need to couch a situation where we can blend the extremes, not having women involved in all matters, and perhaps allow the women to be involved in some matters, because excluding them will not give the men peace of mind. They will never solve, as I know they have been agitating. And really, the world will not look at us as very civilized people if you go on discriminating against women like that. Even attitude towards lesbianism and gayism, even though some people believe that they have no place in our traditional living. Outside, they think we are not doing what is right. These are some of the problems we need to research into. And the affirmative action is a living topic, and which you have to settle. Now, as far as we are concerned, we define it include women. If you look at it, yes. And so, and in fact, in my book on chieftaincy, I've talked about a situation where there are women chiefs with their own queen mothers. Yes, in Accra and Ghana. So why can't they go to the National House? Or if you create a second chamber, why can't they be there? Because they are also paramount chiefs. But some chiefs in some areas, with women sitting side by side with me, take your institution. That's the real problem. We have to work out. We need to make sure that we don't estrange or annoy certain tribes just because we are trying to draw a modern constitution. Then the other issue is the second chamber. The issue of second chamber is now current, and people are talking about it. Getting chiefs to form a second chamber. In the next few minutes, we are going to listen to Dr. S.K.B. Asante. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is how on earth is going to be in a or statutory provisions require that there must be a chief in the Judicial Council, the Police Council, the Prison Council, and some important institutions. If your chief, the paramount chief, don't read or write, how on earth is going to be on any of these situations? So if you are going to think of chieftaincy or chief's position as in terms of second chamber, you need to consider, of course, these days we have chiefs who are doctors, accountants, and well educated, but some power chiefs are still uneducated. Now, if you decide to elect a person, nominate and elect a person who has not been to school to be your chief, what are his chances of getting into any of these institutions? But that, to me personally, education should play a lot of part in determining who gets to the second chamber. And these must be codified. You don't need to leave it out. Then the other one is, what else? What other one? Ministers. This one is common sense. You want to appoint ministers who are parliamentarians and therefore owe allegiance to their constituents. Now, how can one man serve two masters? The time you are required to be at you probably be required, for the sake of numbers, to be in cabinet or parliament. So there's some justification in appointing ministers outside parliament so that they can attend to the people. But then, you see, if you are not inside parliament, the use of matters in the parliament will be denied you. So we decided to put it down for the people of Ghana to decide, what do you want? To have ministers, majority of them coming from parliament, or majority from outside parliament. I personally believe that it is better to have majority of the ministers coming from outside parliament, so that parliamentarians will get time to concentrate on parliamentary affairs. But this one will be delving into politics. I don't do politics in my life, so I think you can skip that. Next one, which is the next one? Prof, what is your next one?
Start the question. We wanted to ask Chief Justice, former Chief Justice, if she has any
comments,
yes, or questions.
Justice Probate, thank you, Chair. Firstly, it's really interesting to get the history from the man who was there. And I would like to say that having worked with the Constitution for almost 24 years as a judge of the Supreme Court, considering the profile of the people who crafted the Constitution, I have nothing but deep respect for them and for what they produced. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of conflicting interests. But considering that this instrument, in the end, has carried this nation for virtually 30 years, it's a worthy instrument. And yes, there's no constitution that's intended to be cast in stone and kept as it was originally defined forever. And that is where the truth of what Justice, I think it was Justice Soa, his famous statement that it is a living document reflecting the changing and the dynamics of society. The humans, we are born and then we go through many changes and become old and we die. That's all part of the inevitable change. Change is built into being human. Change is built into being on this earth. So definitely the time has come to do some tinkering, to look at what has worked, what has not worked very well, what could work better. For example, like this issue of MPs and ministers. It has not worked to her interests, and it's something that needs to, and it's not necessary anymore, and it's something that needs to be dealt with. So we have a good constitution. It's something I'm extremely proud of, and many times when I have had to answer questions like, what's so special about Ghana that you've made it and we have not? With amongst people I meet with from within Africa or from even Southeast Asia. And I will say that we have a very unique constitution which was crafted by the hairdressers and the shea butter and cashew farmers as against the farmers associations and the butchers and all that. It's a people's constitution, and it's surprising we did so well with the final outcome. And we need to move forward with it and craft another constitution, another version, various amendments and revisions of various portions which will take us through the cyber age, through the post-COVID age, through all the changes we're going through now, and beyond for another 30, 40, 50 years. And that's what we should do. The British never even used to have a written constitution. It kept evolving, and it's still evolving. The American Constitution is a tiny document, but if you were to put all the jurisprudence and the amendments and the philosophy to it, it's quite a thick document, and that is all there is to it. I think that's what in political science, what? Dialectics, isn't it? Yes, you have the emergent, the present thought, and then the emerging thought, and then the mixture, the synthesis, and then the thesis, the antithesis, and then you get it like that, you get the synthesis. But the day you get your synthesis, you're already getting another antithesis coming. That's dynamics. And we shouldn't be afraid of change. So the only thing, Justice Grove, so I've said my piece about the Constitution of Ghana, of which I'm very proud. Just briefly, one thing that I have found very disappointing in reading the Constitution, one, not surprisingly, considering the profile of its structure, of the makers, is just how fantastically conceived local government provisions are. And it is, and then how horribly disappointing the translation into what is actually on the ground. Because to me, the heart of the Constitution and the whole of what was crafted was an efficient and decentralized local governance. That's what was envisaged. What went wrong?
You see, it was, if you look at the mixture of people who drew it, you could see that when we got there, they said to themselves, this is our area, this is going to be our power, so we got to put in what we want. And we try to convince them that this is an academic exercise. What we're talking about may not work. So let's leave it to the people of Ghana to practice it and come out with what they want. But then, that's why I took the trouble to read the list to you. If you look at the majority of the people with the vote, if they decided that that was their government and they want it in a particular shape, it was difficult to convince them. And in fact, that is the more reason why this review is necessary. You have to look at it from the academic point of view and decide what you think is best in the circumstance, not necessarily what is there. I took the trouble to tell you all that the Constitution stood for and what you try to do, so that you decide on what you think is the best interest. We did not have our way all throughout. It was a question of majority carried the vote. Majority did carry the vote. If the majority view was what you saw there, it was likely to go in. And I, as a person, the last person to authorize the print, I had no mandate to change anything. So now, the answer, after 30 years of work, what the reviewers should ask themselves is this in the best interest of Ghanaians? If it is, leave it there. If it is not, change it or amend it. Well, nobody will do it. And once you review this Constitution, you can trust that the next 10, 20 years, nobody will touch it again. Because it's an expensive exercise. When one considers what happened to Dr. Fiaju's Constitution, and all that has come to it is now fiasco. Nothing. We didn't get anything out of it. We spend money like that and energy like that. Look at this afternoon, 4 o'clock, here we are. We have other things to do. But if all you can do is to tinker over the provisions, then you might as well leave them there. But bear in mind, the majority of the people were the ordinary men, and they thought that was their area, and they thought that was what was in their best interest. And by majority, they will have their way. That's why I'm saying there are certain things they should be changed as of course. Like tribunal, what's the tribunal doing in the Constitution? There's not a single tribunal working, and yet it's entrenched in the Constitution. You can't take it out, right? All the tribunals have been dissolved. Nobody dissolved, they went by themselves. You see, and the same thing applies to this local government situation. What do we want is what we should put in, not what some individuals, but I warn you, I've said it already. Considering the caliber of the people at the helm of the reviews, be careful that in 20 years' time, people don't meet here again or elsewhere and say, hey, we have that kind of material, because look at the people who do it. Professors, doctors, academics, judges, lawyers, and it's the opposite of what happened at our time. Then you have to wait for another generation, 3, 4 generations, for them to say, now we had the ordinary people. Now we have the academics. What do you want? So in the long run, let us do what is in the best interest of our current generation, and then leave it to posterity. Thank you.
To that huge constitutional review effort 10 years or so ago, I mean, there was money spent. When I was leaving governance, I actually had a building built to institutionalize a governance secretariat in the governance of Ghana. But it was taken away and given to the Constitutional Review Committee. And a lot of money and effort went into it. So what happened?
Exploited it to the extent that we have created a bastion of an elite that have now captured the Constitution for use in a duopoly. I think this is what we must address. How do we, counteract that? But coming from the north, I cannot sit down without referring to the issue about the chiefs in the north. Respectfully say, it is absolutely not correct that women cannot sit in the same room as men in the north. As a matter of fact, the substantive chieftaincies in the north, which are Gonja, Dagbon, and the Mamprosi, require, in fact, without the power of the women, the chief cannot sit down. And as a matter of fact, somebody who comes directly after Ndeura Jakwa's conquest, the first 2 chiefs that were installed were not his paramount chiefs, the sons now. They were the Mankumaura and the Serpeura. No, they don't go to church. Some of them go to, they go to the mosques. The Muslims go to the mosque. But that is an Islamic issue. It has got nothing to do with our tradition. It has nothing to do with our tradition. And this is the other issue that we have when we are inputting influence. And I don't mean to disparage anybody, but the fact of the matter is the local communities that surround here constitute what is called the North to government. But they are actually not the North. Nobody from there comes from the North. They don't come from the northern tradition. They are the settler's peoples who have settled here for a long time and are mainly dominated by the Islamic tradition. So if you want to take them as representatives of the North, you will mistake. Because yes, those are all Islamic institutions. In our culture in Gonja, we brought Islam to Ghana. The Islam came in Ndeura Jakwa to Ghana. The oldest mosque in Ghana is at Larbanga. But we are not Muslims. The ruling clan are not Muslims. We have Muslims to pray for us. They can fast for us. They can pray for us. When it comes to traditional things, we do it our way. Even at the burial of the Agbonra, no Muslim is allowed inside the water. So a clear distinction has been made between the religion and the traditional system. And if we want traditional system part of the governance, then we have to take it and leave out the religious elements. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Thank you. I'm a lawyer and also a politician. Just to answer your question, the last time you were here, I brought the constitutional review by Professor Fiajo, 994 pages. 994 pages of the review. The big book, I brought it here, so it's still there. And Honorable OQUAYE said we will consider it in terms of reviewing any constitution, and I hope we do. I'd like to find out from Mr. Justice Brobe, what went into giving the president so much powers? Was it because at the time you were drafting there was a gun to your head? Because in as much as we feel the Constitution has served us right, there are certain parts of the Constitution that haven't served us right, and that is one bit of it too. And correct me if I'm wrong, priests were not allowed, they were in the same category as chiefs, right? How come we have politicians who are priests but are in parliament, are in the executives? Does it mean that we've actually been able to bastardize the Constitution for our own benefit, especially where political parties are concerned? And if that is the case, if we're going to review the Constitution, how do we make sure that these things don't happen? Thank you.
2 more questions and then we are done. Thank you.
Much. Mine is just in relation to, or with relation to Mr. Abu Zakare's point. I want to also add that in the aspect of Islam, there has over the time been some liberation kind of, some would even call themselves liberal Muslims. So I know it hasn't been static. The issue of women even participating in decision making, including moral searches, preaching and all that. The difference here is that mostly the women are allowed to sit differently or separately from the men. Otherwise, it hasn't been very static. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Daniel up here. Right, the first one is it's a comment, a short one, that 30 years ago, the Assembly considered that the local government system should be made non-partisan, and then when it comes to elections. And today, as we speak, survey after survey, especially the latest one from CDD in connection with Afrobarometer, suggests that more than 70% of Ghanaians are insisting that we should elect MMDCs on a non-partisan basis. So I think it was a very, very good call that 30 years ago Constituent Assembly made. In fact, even the more and more our multi-party politics deepen, the more Ghanaians join who are calling for non-partisan system of local government. And Ghana is not alone. We have Canada and the US and other advanced countries where we have non-partisan local government system. But now to the question. We have an executive with 4-year and then a legislature with 4-year tenure. And that was also an innovation because from 1957, 60, 69, all of them we had 5-year tenures, except for 1979 where the legislature had 5 years and then the executive 5 years. My question is, why did we give, or why did the Assembly give the executive and the legislature 4 years? Because in all of Africa, 4 years is the shortest. And in Asia, you don't find 4 years. And for a developing country, for those of us as political governance experts, 4-year tenure is very short for a developing country to make meaningful progress in development. So why 4 years?
He's going.
Yes, my name is Nana from Poma. I don't even know if it's a I just want to find out from what you said. I'm wondering, is it like in drafting the Constitution, you have to consider the various religious groups and their beliefs, the chieftancy and the tribal, whatever they believe in? Is that how it's supposed to be? Or we come up with something that is like the basic human rights or the rights of people, so that if I'm a chief, or if I belong to a tribe or I belong to a group, I would respect what the Constitution says, so that whether I want to allow women in that group or not should not be my decision. I should be able to take that group to court. This is the right that I have as a Ghanaian, a constitutional right. I'm confused there, because as a chief, as a queen mother, I know I couldn't go to the traditional council sometimes, and I was surprised to find out that the Constitution did not make provision for the queen mothers to be part of the traditional, the meeting. And this was told to me by my chief, who is a judge. So
okay, yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Justice, so that's
the last.
okay. Last question, yes.
Mine is just a short one. We spent, I'm just following up on what Madam Leonora said and what Kwame said. We spent $6 million on it. When are we having a referendum? Because it was really done well. When are we having a referendum? We are still talking about getting to the action that counts.
All right, thank you very much. You see, I have said over and over again that I don't do politics, and all my life I try to say I will. Many friends of mine are politicians, and they are enough to influence me the way they want. So I remain independent. I don't have the answer for the Fiajo Constitution at all, and Fiajo is my friend, and we talk and we laugh. But I never ask him question, what are you going to? Because I know the power doesn't lie with him. It lies with others, and in fact it doesn't lie with us. In this room, at best we can make recommendations, and the people who matter don't mind us. That's too bad for us. That's number one. Number two, in the case of the women, you see, what we sought to do in the Constitution was to put down principle, not look at, because if I'm a Catholic, and there are certain things, if we insisted, they would have gone to the Constitution. I said, no, that's not what we do. Put the principle down to be applicable to everybody. That's why if you read the definition of chieftaincy, it covers both men and women. And those chiefs who said they would take us to court, they didn't. But the one particular chief who said he will also take us to court for insisting that they should not do politics. He's dead recently. He too didn't. And many of them were just frightening us. But some, I think, unfortunately, some of them gave in. They voted in a way which should not have been the case. You see, all this, the 4-year period that someone referred to. You see, we compared 5 years, 8 years, and 7 years, and then 10 years. And eventually, let me tell you, what I remember happened when I looked at my notes was that we said, look, if the government is doing well, he had 4 years, he will win the second time in the 4 years. But after 4 years, we convince ourselves that no matter who you are, you won't go the third time. And some people said they would, depending on who the president is, and he becomes a dictator, that's different. He becomes a dictator, he won't go, he will stay there. Some East African countries, they've been there. One president, you don't know him too well. Every time he alone signs elections, he wins not less than 90%. I mean, it's simply ridiculous. But he's gone, yes. So that's what we took 4 years, because we proceeded on the basis that the first year you experiment and look around and settle down. Then you start implementing towards the second year, towards the end of the first year, and you continue in the second year if you have good policy for the people. But we were convinced that, look, if you don't have good policy, you won't last for maybe 4 years, because I've come. Then, the beginning of the 4 years, you see people demonstrating, and you know your days are numbered. That's why we took. And 4 years, 8 years should be enough. But again, there was the argument that if the government is bad, It's easier to get rid of them quickly. Let them go fast. 4 years and stay there 5, 7 years. Because if you give him 7 years, you can't touch him. But if you give him 4 years, you can remove him by the next election. This is why. So if the people think that the French system, 7 years, is what you want, well, that's your prerogative. But I believe what we did was right. 4 years, if you are good, you get the second year. If you come second year, you don't perform, the people know what to do with you. And the danger that others argue is, if they become complacent, from 4 years, we are in trouble, because it means you have to put up with them for another 4 years. That's the choice of the people. Whatever it is, numbers are dictatorial, and there's no rationale, no logic in it. What if you take 7 years, somebody will have something to say again. 3 years is too small. 8 years is too much. So 5 years is not good enough. 10 years everlasting. So when it comes to numbers, we don't dogmatize. Leave it as it is. And I think that 4 years is better for us in view of what is happening. You come, you don't do well, within 4 years, the second time you won't come back. But if you come the second time and then you misbehave, the people of this country know what to tell you, short of demonstrations. And then what else? The FIAO committee, I've told you, I have no control over that. What is it? The powers of the president. Let me make it clear. Don't get the impression that we do the constitution with guns to our head. No soldier ever set foot there. That's why I say I respect the PNDC very well, because they left us alone. Whatever they did behind, I wouldn't be able to vouch for it if they did anything at all. But in the assembly, we operated freely. Now, the presidential power actually stemmed from misconception of American government. You see, they think that the American president is strong, he can command a lot of things, and that's what we need in Africa. And it also originates from our traditional setup. If you go to any village, the chief is number one, and is the most powerful, the most important person. And we thought our political system should follow suit. Now, if it turns out that, well, it hasn't worked, that's why we are here. Change it. But we had reason for doing that. I think we were trying to imitate the American system and also follow our traditional setup that, well, the head must be able to rule. And now that's what is happening. And that's about all for now. We can go on and on and on, but I think we need to go and join Dr. SKB Asadi. He's waiting for us.
Yes, this group. I'm really, really grateful. And, please, just to announce that our chairman hasn't got any further remarks, except to remind you and invite you to next week's presentation by our own immediate past Chief Justice, Justice Sophia Ekufu. It promises to be an interesting one, stimulating and amazing on the judiciary. So see you next week. We are done. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you all. Thank you one, and thank you all. Thank you.